If I have to die trying, I will spend the rest of my life trying to help people understand what is love. We talk about that word so much. I would argue it's probably one of the most often spoken words in our vocabulary, specifically the English language. I love you. Oh, I love chocolate cake. Oh, I love those shoes. I love, love, love. Love is love. And yet, so few people have a true understanding of what love is or how we are supposed to love, true love, the verb, the people God puts in our lives, whether they are our friends or whether they are our enemies. And so I'm always trying to make this a very practical lesson when I tell people about loving someone else. And I'd like to start with my standards, though I'm going to cross over to all of you who aren't standards. You might be happily married, you might be in various phases of your life. But let's just start with this. Often when my standers have a spouse that has left them and they're committing adultery and they're hurting the spouse, let's just say the stander and the prodigal. So the stander is angry and said, well, I'll take my prodigal back any chance I get once they stop committing adultery. Once they stop doing this, I'll gladly take him back, but I'm not letting them come back into the house until such and such. Let me just read something for you. It was in this weekend's readings, and it simply says this. In Romans 5, verse 8, it says, but God proves his love for us that and while we were still sinners, God died for us. See, God proved his love for us in that while we were sinning, he died for us. I wish I could be as eloquent as my priest was this weekend when he talked about it while we were sinning. So here's one of the things I say to people. Okay, yeah, sure, you and your spouse can have a fight and you don't, want to talk to them. But when they say sorry, when you get back together, then it's okay to love them. And I say, what about loving them while they're still hurting you? Let's go specifically to talk about the standards. Your spouse is sleeping with someone else, not you. And yet, would you die for them right now? I mean, would you really die for them? How would you love them? I often tell my standards, and I'm telling you, wait not. When your prodigal needs something, go give it to them, even if they don't want you to. Even if they're saying, I hate you, I don't want you around, I don't care if you give me this or do that. You find out that your friend is sick. You bring them their favorite soup from Panera. You find out that your enemy has a need. This colleague that you work with, and he or she makes your life a living hell. They're talking behind your back. They are just doing awful things. But you find out that this person is in need of something. And you go and put $100 in his or her mailbox because you know that they need it. That's love. You could take soup to someone who you're estranged sibling. You write a letter to someone who hasn't spoken to you. Again, this isn't about your feelings for them per se. This is about that they hate you, they loathe you, they've made your life a living hell. Again, that sibling, child, spouse who stole your money, snorted cocaine, and and brought a bunch of grief to your family. The one that broke up the family. What do you do for them? How do you love them? Whenever we talk about loving our enemies, I always listen to, this happened several times in church, I've listened to a priest say, loving your enemies, this example, this example, this example. And they always seem to gloss over the spouse. I'm like, mention the spouse. Because right there in church at that time, there's some husband and some wife are hating on each other who just had a fight. Who I'm sitting here and I know my spouse is currently in the middle of an affair and I'm not going to do anything nice or say anything nice. But Christ says, you guys were committing adultery and I said, I still want to die for you. You were sex trafficking. I want to die for you. You guys were stealing from your boss, maybe printing your, taking a ream of paper or pens or something from work that seems like nothing. Stealing pharmaceuticals. You were doing those things. Jesus saw you doing those things. And yet he still died for you. How do we do that? Of course, it's easier said than done. I remember when I was being offended by someone, I was like, when that person, and the Lord spoke to me and said, no, not when, now. How do you love that person now? And I'm like, I don't want to love that person right now. And Jesus said, you're the Christian. You're the Catholic. I want you to show them what true love is. If it makes your flesh crawl right now to think about that person who hurt you or offended you, to think of doing something nice for him or her, then you know you're on the right track. Because true love, in this sense, should not feel easy, because then it's just a friend or a child or someone who's easy to love. We are Christians, you guys. God called us to a higher standard. He said, you go and love the unlovable. You love your enemies. Go love that person that killed your spouse in a car accident because he or she was drinking. How can you do that? How can you love that prisoner who's in jail because of something they did to you or for you? What about that guy that shot the police officer? You just want to hate him. How do you love him? What do you do for them? Do you bring him the Lord? Or do you just return animosity? It's a pretty heavy subject, but I ponder it frequently. And that while we were still sinners, Jesus loved us. So of course I do what I do for a living, so I'm not going to end this without specifically focusing on my standards. Those of you in hard marriages, where you're right now living in the same house as a spouse who is just ugly and nasty to you, or your spouse no longer lives there. You know, he or she is not only committing adultery, but calling you all kinds of names, bad-mouthing you, telling the kids that it's all your fault. And now your kids even believe them, and your kids are hating on you too. There's nothing more wretched than that. So how do you love that person? Remember, love is a verb. Think of something you can do that would make that person happy, even if they don't want you to do it, even if you don't want to do it. But you know, it's something that would please God. When you do that, you are truly learning how to love like Christ loves. Again, love isn't always easy. Don't listen to the TV commercials that tells you it should be, or that it's all based on feelings. Love is absolutely, unequivocally not a feeling. Love has nothing to do with feelings. Love is a verb. Love is an action. The connection between love and feelings is that the feelings follow actions. Loving feelings beget loving actions. Hateful actions beget hateful feelings. So you may go and mow the lawn of someone you hate, or pick up a prescription and drop it off, or do something for that person who hates you. And even if you see no good, even if you see from them something like, I hate you, don't ever do it again, know this. They're going to be the ones to go home and, having witnessed your love, scratch their heads like, why did he or she do that? You may not know that they're doing that, but love never fails. Never fails. Never. There was no exclusion in that one. Jesus said love never fails. So you go out and love your enemy, regardless of what the outcome is, regardless if God privileges you with seeing the outcome. He may not until you die. Go to heaven. He shows you everything. But rest assured that that love that you show that person will have an impact. Now go out and love not only your friends and family and your neighbors, but love your enemies. Report back to me how it worked. I would love to hear your stories. God bless.